Greetings, everyone. This is Dennis Fair, retired member of the Metropolitan Police Department with 29 years of service till retirement in June of 2019, actually June the 8th. I always say that to begin because you never know who's viewing for the first time that wants to know a little bit of history, a background about myself. I guess the first thing I want to start off with saying, as usual, the views and opinions are of my own. They are not affiliated with any law enforcement agency, including the Metropolitan Police Department or any other agency. These are my opinions. I'm not affiliated with any law enforcement agency, and that's pretty much the basics of it. I wanted to discuss the excessive carjackings in Washington, D.C. A lot of individuals are being carjacked armed and unarmed. It's to the point where now individuals are being carjacked every few hours. There really isn't a way specifically to avoid this. Of course, you can be as vigilant as you can, but at some point, you're going to have to go to the gas station. You're going to have to make a delivery if that's what you do, for as food share, or you delivering for any type of business like Uber Eats, or if you're delivering just for any particular company, you're going to get out of that vehicle and not necessarily leave the vehicle running, because that's pretty much an open invitation to be carjacked, whether it's armed or what they call a hop-in, which is unarmed. Either way, your vehicle is taken and it's an inconvenience, especially in the District of Columbia, because there is no chase policy in the District of Columbia when it comes down to carjackings that are not committed in a violent nature. Meaning, if someone jumps in your vehicle and there's not a violent incident, meaning it's no form of physical confrontation, individual just jumps in while you're putting some food on the porch and pulls off with your vehicle, Metropolitan Police Department is not going to do a whole lot but take a report. And that's kind of sad, but those are the times. And it somewhat makes sense, and it somewhat doesn't make sense. It makes sense because obviously a high-speed chase over a vehicle, and for example, someone's crossing an intersection, and individuals that take these vehicles basically have no real experience at driving at high rates of speeds, or no training in most cases. So in most cases they crash, and a lot of times innocent bystanders or pedestrians are killed or severely injured. So I can understand not pursuing a vehicle for this purpose. But on the same note, on the other side, if you're not going to pursue the vehicles, then it's basically, we can pull up beside a vehicle, or we can pull up beside a police car in a stolen vehicle, and it's not really a whole lot the police can do. If I pull off at the light and burn rubber, by the actual regulations and general orders, I can't chase for that. That's not considered a chaseable offense. So I've got to just pretty much give the last known direction of the vehicle and the description of the occupants, as far as the driver, passengers, what have you, and the description of the vehicle. That's pretty much it. Now, of course, they can get the helicopter up. The helicopter is pretty much, undefeated. You're not really going to outrun a helicopter. It's not happening. Then you can bail out, or jump out of the vehicle and enter an apartment or whatever, but the helicopter is undefeated. For the most part, they can just pretty much, I'll give you an example. The helicopter in a chase is equivalent to shining a flashlight on an ant in open space. It's just pretty much, all they're doing is just pretty much staying on top of the vehicle. And it's not really, you're not going to outrun the helicopter. It's just not going to happen. The most likely thing that will happen is the helicopter will get low on fuel, because they burn a lot of fuel, believe it or not. And a lot of times you'll hear the individuals where you wouldn't hear it. But there have been situations where they'll come over the radio, the individuals that are flying the helicopter, the pilots, the police pilots will come over the air and say, "Dispatcher, be advised, we're going to have to return to the pad." That's where they obviously land. We're low on fuel. And at that point, the helicopter's no longer in the game. That's when it gets tricky, because you don't have that airborne, assistance, which is a major factor. But again, if you don't chase these vehicles and you have a policy where you can't chase, it's just open air on carjackings. You know what I mean? If it's not violent, obviously you have some violent carjacks, and even those, depending on how reckless the chase gets, the officials can cut the chase off at any time. Obviously, you got a high-speed chase coming into a high pedestrian area like 8th Street or Georgetown. A lot of times that chase is going to be cut because it's a good chance that somebody's going to die in that chase. And in most cases, it's not the carjacker. It's not the individual that's operating the stolen vehicle. So I can understand that. But again, like I said, it's a give-take situation as far as my opinion. You don't want to see anyone killed in the apprehension or chase of a vehicle. But on the same note, what about the person that was delivering food? His vehicle is gone, and now you can't chase it simply because it wasn't a violent offense. 9 times out of 10, that individual is not going to see that vehicle again. And if he does see it again, a lot of times it's going to be burned up. A lot of these vehicles are taken for commission of crimes. I mean, a lot of shootings are used. A lot of these vehicles are used for shootings, homicides, robberies. That's pretty much the given. And you do this, you burn the vehicle up after it's done. And the individual, some of these people may not have full coverage, insurance or what have you. And a lot of times, in this particular case, you just out of a vehicle. The insurance is not going to cover it. And somebody that's trying to make ends meet by delivering food or items or whatever they're doing with their vehicle, you lose your vehicle and it's pretty much nothing the police can give you but report numbers. That's a frustrating scenario to be in. And it's frustrating because, like you said, this individual may not ever get their vehicle back. And then when they do get it back, you can't afford to replace or repair what's damaged. A lot of these vehicles are pretty much destroyed. So it's a situation that's a pretty serious problem in D.C. and individuals are being carjacked in every part of the city. It's not so much the so-called hood of Washington, D.C. or the dangerous parts. People are being carjacked on Wisconsin Avenue. They're being carjacked anywhere where there's a gas station or where they catch you slipping. That means if you go in the store, some people freezing in the morning, 15, 16 degrees, that's a perfect time to get them because the average person is not going to turn that car off. So they pumping gas. A lot of times they're so cold, they're not even paying attention to their surroundings. They didn't even realize that it's 3 individuals standing on the gas station parking lot, which should be, a bell should go off in your head, red flag or something. You got 3 individuals standing on a gas station lot and it's 16 degrees. Maybe you should go somewhere else for gas. I personally don't get gas during the nighttime, although I may conceal and carry a gun owner. However, I don't want to put myself in a position recklessly at night, knowing that I might have to use that firearm and defend myself if I don't have to. That's a situation where you do that as a last result. So a lot of times I'll go somewhere, for the most part, during the daytime. I'm not going to really say where I go get gas because I'm not getting paid to promote that institution, or that business rather. So I won't say, but I do go to a area that's well known and my gas during the daytime. But it doesn't mean that you can't get jacked during the daytime. You can get it during the daytime, nighttime. But obviously, if you're at a gas station at nighttime and you're the only one, and you look around, it's one of those situations where it's really no activity, it's not a lot of heavy activity, you put yourself in a position to possibly get carjacked. And a lot of individuals with children don't want to turn the heat off because it's a baby in the back. They don't want to take the keys out. But trust me, the baby is going to live if you take those keys out and lock those doors and pump that gas. And that's another situation. Somebody runs up to you with a gun, and you got your child in the back. That's a very, very awkward situation to be in. You got a vehicle, you got a child in the back. What do? Obviously, you got to try to get that baby. They can have the car. It's not even worth fighting for the car. Get your child out. But in a situation where you got that vehicle running and your child is in the back, I personally think the individuals that do that, that's a form of child endangerment. It's a form of child abuse. You put your child in a situation of harm's way. Why would you have the vehicle running and the child in the back? I mean, and you pumping gas. They already tell you don't pump gas with the engine running anyway. That's on most pumps. But you're going to do that. Supposedly you're thinking you're doing the baby a favor. You're actually doing the baby a disservice or the child a disservice by allowing that vehicle to still be running while you're pumping gas. Personally, that's a tragic situation to have your vehicle, someone jump in your vehicle and your child is in the back and there's nothing you can do but call the police. And you might not even be able to do that if you don't have the cell phone on you, because 9 times out of 10, nobody gets out and takes their cell phone to the gas pump. Now, I have seen people talk on the phones at gas pumps, which they tell you not to do because of static electricity and things of that nature. Not only that, why would you talk on the phone at the gas pump? That call is that important. You can't say, look, I'll call you back after I pump gas. You are putting yourself in a situation where you're distracted, you're focused on the phone call, you're not paying attention to your surroundings. You didn't see the vehicle, or maybe you did see it, that was already at the pump, but nobody was pumping gas. It's a vehicle at the pump with tinted windows. There's nobody in the vehicle as far as you know. But really, there's 3 individuals in the vehicle waiting for their victim. They just parked at the pump, waiting for the victim, like a hunter, hunting deer or something. You pull up, you're not thinking, and as soon as you pull up and get out their vehicle, of course it's running, they jump out. Sometimes they have guns, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the guns are not even necessary. Maybe a knife or whatever, or unarmed. It's not really a thing where you need to be armed if you can just jump in the vehicle and pull off. Don't need a gun, because the negligence of the individual leaving the vehicle running pretty much gave the car away. I do believe, and a lot of people would disagree with me, I do believe if you do something like that, you should be held responsible. If your child is in the vehicle and the vehicle's taken on your negligence, you should be charged with that, because there's no reason for you to leave a child in the vehicle while the vehicle is idling, running, whatever you want to call it. That's just a form of child abuse, and it's negligence. With the police department, and I'm going to be honest, you're not going to see this on the news. The police department in D.C. is pretty much thin. With the retirements and the COVID situation, you got a lot of officers that are off because of COVID. You don't have adequate amount of manpower on most shifts. They're not going to tell you this on the news, and of course the chief is not going to do a press conference and say that. He can't say that for political reasons. I can say what I want to say because I'm no longer affiliated with the Metropolitan Police Department. Individuals can get mad at me. If you don't like what I say, push the dislike, or, it doesn't really faze me. I'm going to speak my truth. It doesn't matter to me what others feel unless they've obviously rolled with me for 29 years and worked with me. If you haven't worked with me, you really can't tell me a whole lot about law enforcement. Some of the things I'm going to say, some people will be like, wow, I can't believe you said that. I'm just going to be honest. The police department is thin. They had a whole year with no academy classes. Now, that's just like sports. Can you imagine if the Redskins went a whole year without drafting anybody? Do you know how far that sets you back? You go 1 year and you don't have an academy class. You have people retiring, getting fired. Some individuals are medically retired because of illnesses and diseases. And you just have people that are, a lot of times, various situations. With the COVID, if an individual is around someone on the police department that they think has COVID, they have to quarantine, whether they have it or not. And a lot of individuals, I'm sure, with any agency, and I know the Metropolitan Police Department well, that's free time off. You're not charged for leave. So obviously, if I've been around Joe Blow and he has COVID, although I know I don't have it, I'm going to use that for some time off, because obviously you can't take off when you want to. The manpower is thin. Getting leave is not as easy as it was in the past because there are details and protests pretty much weekly. So a lot of times I think with the past protests for the mandates, and along with that they had the Roe versus Wade, the abortion protesters here. I know a lot of the officers had to work 11 days straight because of the protest. 11 days straight is 11 days straight. Whether you're sitting behind a computer or whether or not you're in law enforcement. I will say law enforcement can be very stressful, and 11 days with no days off Not to mention, well, whatever you might be going through with at home, personal problems and things of that nature, it takes its toll on you. You're irritable. You don't necessarily get the rest that you should get, depending on where you live. A lot of individuals, for the most part, we've had individuals actually live as far as I know some individuals lived in Pennsylvania, and yes, they were commuting every day. Some individuals lived across the Bay Bridge, which to me, that's pretty serious if you got to commute every day to D.C. from across the Bay Bridge. But to each his own. You're not getting much rest working 11 days straight and having to make that commute. Not to mention, a lot of times you're standing out in the cold on a line, holding a protest line and things of that nature for numerous hours in the cold and what have you. It's strenuous. And the thing is, with those protests, and you still have to maintain adequate manpower for the streets, meaning, people in the section that actually work the streets to take the calls for service. That's not happening. A lot of times, if it snows, the day work shift, a lot of times you have a lot of day work individuals that will call in. And if you worked the midnight shift, you pretty much knew that you weren't getting off on time. We pretty much did. Like I said, I've worked the midnight shift my entire career when I was in law enforcement with the Metropolitan Police Department. So it was given, if you had snow coming during the midnight shift, you knew you weren't going home because the day work people weren't coming in, not all of them, and not enough to allow you to be allowed to go home on time. It was a given. You knew you weren't going home. You're going to be held over for 4 hours at least. That's a minimum. But it was just part of the game. You got used to it. Wasn't no complaining. Wasn't no, I'm going to quit. I can't take this. I'm going to sue the Metropolitan Police Department. I'm suing everybody, like some of the officers you see nowadays that are just having nervous breakdowns based on the January 6th incident. Like I said, that's a whole nother incident and a whole nother topic that I went into on. I went into that already on one of the videos, which you can check out. And I have a whole different philosophy for those officers that quit and complained, and a lot of them can't sleep now and things of that nature. And to summarize that, maybe you shouldn't have chose that occupation because there isn't a whole lot of sleeping and time to yourself in law enforcement if you're actually really out there performing your duties. Now, of course, you got some individuals that sit behind the desk, and not to knock those individuals that have gotten into admin and are not actually on the streets. You do need those types of people. Now, me personally, they could save a lot of money by just putting civilians in that and putting everybody on the street. But, that, of course, a lot of the people in the administrative and the officers like, man, what are you talking about? I don't want to go on the street. Well, maybe you shouldn't have chose this job. I worked the streets until my last day, 29 years straight, unless I was injured or, some situation like that. Other than that, there was no time off or no, I think I'll go to the boys club. That's just me. Now, to each his own. If you have put in an adequate amount of time with law enforcement and you decide to change and, you want to move on, then that's no problem. I have no problem with that. But somebody that's got like maybe a year on, decides to leave and go and to another element like administrative, and then the next thing this individual gets promoted because you got time to study. If you're working in admin, you normally get off. You're not going to be held over in admin. Most of the time, that's not going to happen. If you're doing paperwork, that's not going to say, look, we got too much paperwork, we're going to need you to stay an additional 4 hours. They go home. When we a lot of times are held over, the admin people go home. A lot of times they get to leave, because it's not necessarily for them to be held over unless they're actually on the street. But I'm going to get away from that and get back into the whole carjacking thing. The situation with that is it's very easy to make yourself a victim. There are some things that you can do that prevent that. Like I said, going to the gas station at nighttime, even if it's in a predominantly lit area, if you can, try to go during the day at a prime time. I know it's hard necessarily getting to the pump because you got a line of cars trying to do the same thing, get gas, but you go in the late hours of the night and things like that, you pretty much are prey. And like I said, if an individual has a knife or gun, and the way they roll up on you, if you see the way some of the videos they have put out, the way they roll up on you, these are all planned movements. It's not like they say, you know what, let's carjack somebody. These are all planned. And like I said, a lot of these individuals sit at gas pumps. They say that restaurants that are constantly doing the Uber Eats, they know the guys are coming in there, pick up the food, leave the car running, jump back in, and keep going. These individuals are on time. The more deliveries they make, the more money they make. So you can get relaxed if you're doing that all for 8 hours a day. But the thing is, somebody's sitting there watching you. As soon as you jump out, they jumping in. And even if you don't do anything negligent, you still have the potential to have a gun put to your head, or an individual pulls out a gun. Now, these individuals don't value their freedom. It's not really a situation in D.C. with the Superior Courts. Nobody is really worried about it. With the number of carjackings that's going on, it's pretty obvious. These individuals are not concerned with the police. They're not concerned with the court system. And most of them, you look at the charges when they are arrested, they've been in the court system. So obviously, the courts are no deterrent. And a lot of times you get these individuals, you look at their history, their criminal history. Some of these individuals have been arrested 15, 20, 30 times. Why are they out on the street? I don't believe in incarcerating everyone, but there are some individuals, obviously, you're not going to be able to rehabilitate. It's just not going to happen. Now, obviously, you carjack somebody and in a violent way, or whether it's unarmed, that's their vehicle. You just took someone's vehicle. That's a felony. That's not a misdemeanor. So in my opinion, you really need some mandatory minimums. Now, obviously, they don't really have that, and they don't enforce a whole lot when it comes out. Even when they have strict penalties, for whatever reason, U.S. attorneys, they a lot of times break the cases down, or when it comes to it, somehow the judge allows the individual to be released or something like that. It's just a toxic situation. And then when the individual finally commits a murder, then they're finally held. When a lot of these situations can be prevented if you have some form of penalty that's really a serious penalty. Now, you have mandates. Now, I'm not going to really go into this because this is a real touchy and sensitive topic. You got mandates where you have to show a vaccination card to eat in D.C., but you go through all that to come to D.C. just to eat in one of those restaurants, and you get finished eating and you carjacked, going to your vehicle. Because obviously it's not a whole lot of places to park in D.C., and if you don't use a parking garage, you're not going to necessarily be close to the venues. Like most of these places don't have parking lot, so you'll be in a garage. And a lot of times, these individuals obviously can target you in a garage. You know, they can target you anywhere. But the thing is, in D.C., you can't really rely on the police department to help you and come to your aid when there's, first of all, a shortage of law enforcement in D.C. That's something I know for a fact. You have individuals that you just don't have the manpower. You know, they're doing everything they can to get officers to join as far as the recruiting and things of that nature, but you can't do but so much with the common law enforcement. And these individuals that are currently on the Metropolitan Police Department, you don't see a lot of traffic stops. And I'll challenge anybody, next time you go out and about, just think about, as you move around, and if you're in D.C., think about the last time you saw a Metropolitan Police Department officer on a traffic stop. That's really unheard of. Think about the last time you saw a Metropolitan Police Department officer with a few individuals stop. They're so paranoid that it's not going to look right, or the city's going to come down on them. Hey, you only stopped him because he was green. You know, I use colors like that because I'm not going to point out any specific race or anything like that. But, you know, for the most part, it's a whole sensitive issue, and the police really don't want to be bothered. Nobody wants to put their job in jeopardy. So they don't do anything for the most part but take radio runs and take reports, which, you know, I get that. Excuse me, and I don't get it. How are you going to do your job when you see something that you know is not right, and you're not going to investigate it? You're just going to pretty much drive past it. You know, you took the oath to do the job. So some things you can't overlook, and you got a lot of individuals overlooking stuff. You see some of the vehicles, and you know paper tags on the vehicle. You can't even see the paper. You can't even see what the tag number is. The tag is sold, but a lot of officers not going to even pull that vehicle over because they don't want the trouble. So that individual just keeps getting up, or if they do, it's a whole lot of headache with the individual saying, "Oh, you just stop me because I'm red or I'm burgundy or whatever." And there are cases like that where you have individuals that racially profile. I'm not going to say that doesn't happen because it has always happened. And did it happen when I was on the department? You had certain officers that did it, and they still do it. That didn't go away with the George Floyd situation. It didn't. And I'm being honest, it will never go away. But that's the whole situation. When you got individuals that are not held accountable, whether it be police officers or your everyday criminals. You carjack somebody, whether it's unarmed or not. If you want to take that chance and carjack somebody, you get caught, that should be a mandatory 5 years if it's unarmed. Now, if it's armed or violence in nature, that should be a mandatory 10 years. Hey, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. The old saying from Kojak. My thing is, you carjack somebody violent, and if that goes wrong, that individual lose their life or what have you. That's sending a message. 5 years, mandatory. I don't want to hear about, "Oh, that was my baby. He was with the wrong crowd and all that." That's just the chance you got to take if you commit a crime. That's just the chance you got to take. Some individuals can't be rehabilitated. Now, when you take a chance and do something like that, and of course, I would say make it public, make it known that there's going to be a mandate. If you commit a carjacking, you get caught. If it's unarmed, if it's a jump in, as they say, jump in the vehicle while the individual's putting some food on the porch, you get caught and you get convicted, 5 years. Give you some time to think about it. Now, if it's an armed carjacking, knife, gun, or if you just beat the individual down, or somebody elderly, whatever, you push them to the ground, get in that vehicle, take off. Conviction, 10 years mandatory. You know what I'm saying? You got to do that time. A lot of that, I believe, will stop. The court system in D.C. is so lenient, and you don't even hear the mayor talking about these carjacks. These carjacks are happening on the hour all over D.C. It's to the point now, I actually watch where I go. For the most part, I'm not looking for it, but I keep my legal weapon accessible so I can draw it extremely quick if I have to be put in that situation. I'm not looking for that, but you have to protect yourself. And I tell individuals all the time, if you're comfortable with a firearm and the process, you don't have felonies or anything that will prevent you from getting a firearm, it's something to look into. It really is something to look into. It's not impossible to get a concealed and carry. The whole process is online. You can look it up with the Metropolitan Police Department, the whole procedure, policy. It's not impossible. Now, if you have little children and you're just not comfortable with a gun in your home, it's your personal business. But honestly, to rely on law enforcement, to rely on the politicians to do something, I just don't see it happening. Like I said, you got more focus on the mandate where you got to show a card to enter a restaurant than some form of mandate or some emergency legislation for the carjackings. People are being carjacked on the hour. I'm not just in D.C., but I'm talking about D.C. because I'm a D.C. resident. But this is going on in Bethesda. It's going on all over the place. But there you don't see anything. You don't really see the chief talking about it. And, of course, whenever there's a violent situation, they'll say the textbook stuff. And anybody saw anything, call. And we can't tolerate this. It's the same textbook press conferences. Just the only thing that changes is the areas where they do the press conference. But for the most part, even with the homicides, it's the same textbook. It's the same textbook press conference, the same results, no changes, no, hey, look, we're going to get tough. And I don't know, honestly, if it's a situation where the chief really can't do what he wants to do, or is it that he doesn't really want to do anything because he doesn't want to be viewed as a hardcore chief? I really don't know. But I do know that just being all friendly and soft and jumping rope and just focusing on community in that type of situation where individuals are, it's great that to see the police feeding the homeless and things of that nature. But what point of that is you're wasting manpower with that when you can have cadets that are not obviously full police, they don't have full police powers or anything like that. Let them do that and use your manpower on the streets when you have an actual pandemic of crime. I just don't understand. I see officers jumping rope, push-up challenges. There's a female officer with Metropolitan Police Department. I saw her on Twitter constantly taking pictures, putting pictures in uniform up, which is a violation of the policy. That falls under conduct unbecoming. Certain things you can do in that uniform and certain things you can't. You just can't take random pictures in uniform. It's just that's not part of the policies. And my thing is with carjackings and homicides and the shootings, how do you find the time to take a bunch of selfies in uniform? But it's a different Metropolitan Police Department. It's a different era. This isn't the era I was a part of, because the veteran officers would have pretty much, well, you wouldn't have did it, first of all, because a lot of the veteran officers, when I came on, didn't even really talk to you. You had to pretty much earn your time. And they weren't really talking to you, and they didn't trust you. And that's, like I said, that's another topic. But the thing is, a lot of the officers are not aggressively policing. And when I say aggressively policing, I don't mean go out here and just profile and just do crazy stuff and mistreat people, but do your job. If somebody drives past and they got no lights on, conduct a traffic stop. Conduct a traffic stop. But a lot of these individuals say, look, I wash my hands with that. I'm not putting myself in a position to get jammed up. They don't call me, I'm not calling them. I've heard officers say that. I'm not doing anything. If they don't call me, I'm not calling them. And these are new officers. A lot of them that haven't been in anything. And then these are the same officers that get promoted. And what do? They're supervising other districts and they don't know jack, And with the carjacking situation, it could be handled. There's obviously something you could do. Like I said, with all the money that they just had some program where they had an ABLE program. That's basically summarized that when they're doing in-service training with the Metropolitan Police Department, they have individuals, I believe they're from Georgetown University, come and give scenarios, and basically to summarize it, they're getting officers to step in when they see some wrongdoing. Like if the officer is overdoing it, he's being too aggressive with the individual that he's arresting, somebody's supposed to step in, like call timeout, and let's say, look, hey man, I got this, I'll handle this. And things of that nature, which is something that you've been trained to do. That was part of the training. It's pretty much ethics, but they've called it something else. And obviously, they gave Georgetown a contract to come teach these officers this, and that pretty much, honestly, that lasts about, as far as that training, however long they do it. Once these officers leave the academy, that goes out the window, because most of the time, and they're telling you that you're supposed to be able to go to an official, a lieutenant or captain, that say, even if the captain is doing something wrong, you're supposed to step in and say, hey cap, I don't think you should handcuff him like that. That doesn't work like that. You can try that, but there's not supposed to be any type of what's the word I want to use? There's not supposed to be any retaliation if you do step in with a top-ranking official, but honestly, there will be. And it's not going to be kept secret. They're going to tell the other officials. They're going to tell the other officers. And honestly, regardless of what ABLE teaches, there's going to be a hostile work environment. So, of course, officers take the training, get through the training, but the chances of officers really going to top officials and doing that, I don't see it happening. Now, there is some serious lack of training that needs to be addressed, but I tried to, I actually did email the ABLE program, the people that are conducting the training, and I asked about why not have retirement officers participate in some of these situations and talk to these officers, the newer officers, about being professional and things like that, being that some of the officers, obviously like myself, that did 29 years, I know some of the things that are problems with the police department. And of course, they referred a officer, I think he's retired now, officer, to email me and discuss it with me, but they never. In other words, what they did in a nice way. They didn't want to be bothered with me. They don't want to be bothered with any veteran officers. They don't want to hear. They just pretty much want to build a department for some training that, in my opinion, it's not going to be effective. It's not going to be effective at all. But that's the department. They don't want to focus on some of the problems of the department, but the individuals a lot of times don't have the green light to go out here and police. And it's sad because you're going to pretty much have crime like it is now. And we're just talking about carjackers. It's just a melee. You got individuals doing whatever they want any given time. They taking vehicles, and like I said, now it's on the hour. You see it on the hour. Vehicle taking at DuPont Circle. Vehicle taking on Wisconsin Avenue. Vehicle taking here. Vehicle taking there. Some of them are armed. Some of them are not. Some of them people just jump in their vehicle. Regardless, the negligence plays a role in it, but you shouldn't have to worry about if you go in the store, if you come out, individuals jumping out on you, and taking your vehicle as soon as you get in the vehicle, But it's just, and if nothing is done, it's pretty much going to be a situation like Chicago. And slowly but surely, D.C. has turned into that. And my problem is, I see the mandates. I see how individuals are being fined if you don't enforce the mandate of an individual coming into a restaurant and if they don't show the vaccine card, or the individual store manager doesn't enforce that, they're fining them. But meanwhile, you can carjack all over the city 24/7, and you don't see the mayor really saying a whole lot. You don't really see the chief saying a whole lot. Now, obviously, he may be in a situation where he can't really do a whole lot, just like the police department. They can't really police like they want to police, because if they do, citizens a lot of times, or just the mayor or even some of the top ranked members of the police department, chief, they see things, and even though it might be within the guidelines, a lot of times you had a chief say, "Oh, that just didn't look right, and I don't find I find this appalling." But in reality, some of these incidents, they didn't violate any guidelines. It's just that the chief has to co-sign with it, even though the officers might have been right. He has to do it because obviously the mayor is on his head, so he's got to play by her rules. He can't be chief like Chief Forward, which is one of the old school chiefs that just wasn't out here about just violating people. But on the same note, we're not going to tolerate no open air drug markets. Individuals where it's like pretty much a trap house and it's just individuals selling dope all night long. We're going to handle that. We're going to have our plainclothes unit get involved. We're going to have our SOD, Special Operations Division, Narcotics Division get involved in this, and we're going to shut this down. Now, it's like, well, we don't really want to use plainclothes units or anything like that because that's just offensive, and what would the mayor think? She may not like that. So you got pretty much a city of chaos. You can't really go out here without having your head on a swivel. And how much would it really take to get a bait car, a vehicle that for the most part that you get in it, you carjack or do whatever it is you do, they leave it running, you jump in it, the vehicle pretty much, you take off, but eventually the vehicle will cut off. And you've probably seen this on the show that they used to have, but because of the cancel culture in law enforcement, that was just too much and people just couldn't take it, and it was just too offensive. You get in the vehicle and you take it, and the vehicle eventually cuts off, the doors lock, the windows are not breakable, so you can't break out of it, and you're trapped in there like a rat. And in that particular case, you should be charged. You should be charged and give them that minimum 5 years, or depending on, like I said, if it just gives some time out. And that will have individuals giving thought, should I jump in this car or not? Or what if this is a bait car? But you don't have any of that. It's really a common sense solution to it, and it's accountability. And when I say accountability, I'm referring to everybody, law enforcement. Obviously, you get an individual that's carjacked somebody and, he crashed the vehicle, whatever. Obviously, you can't beat him to death after he jumps out of the vehicle and you've got him in handcuffs or whatever. That doesn't work. You use the minimum amount of force necessary with making the arrest. Now, if it's excessive, you hold those officers accountable too. I'm not going to sit here and give officers passes when I'm not going to get a citizen's passes or the criminals. You take a vehicle, you get locked in the vehicle, or it's a bay car, guess what? You shouldn't have never tried to take the vehicle. You already showed your intentions. You got in the vehicle knowing that it wasn't yours. What you going to say? Oh, I just got in it because it was running. I was going to take it to the police station. Come on now. That's not realistic, But it's accountability, and when you got no accountability, then you got problems. You're pretty much giving a green light to crime. And like I said, with the carjackings, a lot of times it's not so much the joyride. A lot of times you think it's they want to joyride. It's not that hard to get a vehicle. If you work every day or you put your mind to it, you're going to accomplish anything. But these individuals are getting these cars a lot of times to commit shootings, then burn the vehicle up, and then, ghost. Last seen. But this is not looked at as a pandemic. People are getting their vehicles taken, and a lot of times you don't see it on the news unless it's a individual that's of some status, like I believe it's an individual that's running for DC Council or something like that. His vehicle was taken, so he made the news. Obviously, the Joe Blow citizen that got beat down or had a gun put in their face is not going to make the news. In most cases, you won't even know about it. They're not going to even talk about it. But he made the news, which I guess is good because it brings a little bit of light to it. But it's been going on for his particular one situation. It's like 5 or 6 per day, and not to mention the ones that a lot of times are not even reported, because for whatever reason, individuals might not have no insurance or tags or situation. It might be a little shady situation with the vehicle, and then it's taken. They don't want to go to the police. And some people don't go to the police in situations like this for various reasons, from not trusting the police or to the situations where the vehicle might not, everything might not add up with the vehicle. So they're not going to the police. But to bring light to it, because this individual was a potential politician, is kind of biased. Why give him that type of publicity, but then the average citizen is working hard every day, and some of these individuals get their vehicles taken, they can't replace it. His vehicle just happened to be a BMW, I believe, but the thing was, you shouldn't pick and choose who you give the publicity to, but for whatever reason, they gave him the news coverage, I guess for whatever reason, because he was a potential DC council member, he couldn't get carjacked, or he wasn't supposed to get carjacked. Crime doesn't discriminate, doesn't care about whether or not you're black, you're white, green, orange, purple. If it's an opportunity there, you're going to be taken advantage of. If it's an easy opportunity, that's potentially an easy one, even if it's not easy, you just happen to be at the wrong place at the right time, you're going to get got. It's just that simple. But it just shows that the bias and the coverage, he's talking about, the kids, the children the youth need jobs. That's totally irrelevant. That's not necessarily the case. It needs to be accountability. Some individuals, obviously, you can't rehabilitate. There are jobs out here, obviously, because you got individuals on the news and business owners talking about they can't really maintain because they can't keep employees. So obviously there are jobs out here. Then obviously you're not going to be able to necessarily buy all the top designer things with some of these jobs, but you're working. You have to work yourself up. Nobody's going to pay you $100,000 a year just because you're you. That doesn't work. So a lot of these individuals have the potential and have the opportunity to get jobs, but in a lot of situations, working isn't cool like it was back in the day. Everybody want to flash money, whether it's fake or, social media has destroyed a lot of the youth because they're trying to uphold the image that they really can't afford. You can't afford these individual clothes and designs unless you're going out here, in most cases, robbing or doing something criminal at that young age. 20 years old, you should be working. You should be in school. But trying to live up to a certain image, obviously taking vehicles, robbing, committing violent crimes, shootings. A lot of times these shootings are based on internet beeps and stupid things, stupid stuff like that. It's just senseless. But my whole issue is pretty simple: accountability. Accountability. I don't believe in putting everybody in jail. I don't. There's some individuals you can reach, some individuals you can talk to, but you have to set an example. You can't allow people to go out here and get involved in crime and these carjackings a lot of times, and then you finally catch the individual, and then you check his records. Like, man, this individual had about 15 UUVs. UUVs is an unauthorized use of a vehicle, basically stolen vehicle. You've been caught in a vehicle like 15 times. Why is this guy out? Obviously you can try to rehabilitate somebody, but if they got a stack of criminal situations and crimes, some people you're not going to be able to rehabilitate until you give them some penitentiary time. And I'm not talking about 30 days in DC jail, or I'm talking about maybe start off 5 years, a minimum. Your mandatory minimum, 5 years. Now, you're not going to stay at DC jail for 5 years with folks. They're going to ship you out somewhere across country, where your family can't come visit you or send you a commissary and things like that. It's got to be accountability. It's got to be some form of, I got a lot to lose if I do this. But in DC, taking a vehicle with so many people doing it, what's the chance of me getting caught? And I don't know if these individuals know the Metropolitan Police Department is thin. That's no secret. I mean, everybody and their mother should know. If you pretty much can tell, if you're out and about, you don't see any traffic stops. You don't see law enforcement out that much. You can ride around DC, and sometimes you may not see one of the Metropolitan Police Department cars depending on where you go, you might not see a car for like 30 minutes to an hour. Where back in the day, you always might run into a police car parked somewhere, or individual might be in the store, or an individual might have a traffic stop, or they might be on the scene or something. A lot of these individuals disappear until they get a call for service. And unfortunately, I understand that, because you don't want to lose your job. That's your livelihood. But then again, I don't understand it because you took the oath. So when you see something going on, or you see something that's just not right, you turn the other cheek. You can't do that. A lot of individuals do it, but it's not why you took the oath. You took the oath to do a job. And right now, the majority of individuals, it's pretty obviously they're not doing the job. They're not. You don't see a whole lot of proactive police there. The chief, and they don't endorse that. They really would prefer you don't do it without saying it. They obviously, if they penalize you every time you do something, or you're scrutinized, or microscope is held over every time you make an arrest, you're gonna be deterred from doing it. You're gonna be deterred from working. You're just gonna be collecting a check. And like I said, with individuals retiring, those that are affected with the COVID situation, you have individuals that are resigning. You have some individuals that are medically being retired. You have individuals that are, of course, you're always going to have your terminations. And you have a whole year with no academy class. You can never catch back up with that unless you doubled a year in the academy to replace those officers. They didn't want to give the funds to put the officers. Obviously, they asked for more officers. I think they gave them like maybe half of what they asked for. The department will never catch up. Never. And to tell you or give you an idea how bad it is, when I retired, I was offered $70,000. I think I was paid at the time $70,000 or whatever to return as a senior officer. I was asked twice would I like to return. I turned it down based on the climate and the conditions of law enforcement, and not just those conditions, but the climate of the Metropolitan Police Department. There are things that I saw before I left that I was like, oh nah. Just, I'm praying that I'm just able to leave in one piece, because a lot of the officers were very scary, and it wasn't all of them. A lot of officers were very scary. They didn't want to put their hands on anyone, even when it was warranted. You have an individual screaming that he's not going to get in the patrol wagon, and obviously you can't just say, well, okay, well, we just hope and maybe magically he'll just teleport into the wagon. No, you're gonna have to use force to get them in the way. A lot of these officers would just stand with their hands behind their back, and you would have to pretty much do all the work with a partner. Like I said, I had a partner that didn't mind, going physical when it was necessary. But a lot of times we would have to do the physical part, and a lot of the officers wouldn't even help us. They would just stand there looking at us like we were deers. But that just showed they didn't want to get involved. They didn't want to put their hands on nobody, even when it was required. These officers were pretty much just scared straight. And you got a lot of officers like that are not focused on law enforcement. They're focused on making TikTok videos. They're doing everything but police. My thing is, I can understand that if you are concerned about the welfare of your job, but how do you have the time to make TikTok videos and taking selfies in the police cars and drag race and crashing police cars and doing all types of other stupid, childish things, and you're not policing, So that's a whole, like I said, it's not a whole another topic. But when I think about the whole issue of the carjackings, it's going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better. And my advice to individuals that are relocating to the city, you got to really give some thought, or if you're just commuting to the city, you got to give some serious thought to whether or not that's really the move to make, relocating to DC with the crime like this. Because it's a lot of money to pay for a house. These houses are going for like $500,000 and up, and some of them $1 million. That's a lot of money to pay to come and have the quality of life. When you're hearing gunshots every night, I look at the Ring doorbell posts. A lot of these individuals post the Ring doorbells, fully automatic weapons. If you can hear gunshots, you're too close. If you can hear it, that means they can penetrate your window, your wall, and anything else if you got children. You shouldn't be in that type of element. Where I'm at, I don't really hear that type of situations every now and then, but very, very rarely where I'm located. And even with that said, I'm not a new resident, so I didn't pay $500,000 or $500,000, these $1 million for my property. I've been here for the most part all my life, and I was able to attain a second property in DC, and I got it before the actual rush and flood into DC. Back when I got it, a lot of individuals were like, man, you still live in DC? I'm never coming to DC. You can have DC. Why don't you move out to Maryland? And now, if you look at the news, Maryland pretty much is DC. Really, depending on what part of Maryland it is, you can't tell if it's DC or Maryland. It should make it the 8th district, certain parts of Maryland. Because the things that happen in those parts of Maryland are just as violent as DC, whereas back in the day, if you moved to Maryland, you was, living high on the hog, as they say. You was big time. Now, depending on where you are in Maryland, you look at some of the places like Bowie and all these spots, man, these individuals getting killed, and it can happen anywhere, and that's not striking on Bowie or some of these other locations. But at one point, Maryland was really a quality spot to go to, but now it's basically depending on where you are. Maryland is DC extended. I call it the 8th district, and the thing is, when it comes down to these carjacks, and I'm like I said, I'm gonna summarize it, you can't necessarily avoid it totally, but you can do some things like avoid going to these gas stations at nighttime, avoid going to some of these, I hate to say it, no-name gas stations where it's not really a whole lot of traffic. Of course, you want the cheapest price of gas because gas is ridiculous. But on the same note, what's more valuable, your life or getting gas at a gas station is cheap, and you notice there's nobody really there but the 3 guys that are standing at the window or in the doorway of the gas station. And a lot of these businesses allow these individuals to hang in these businesses because they know eventually they're going to want something from the gas station or whatever. They're going to Black and Miles or some Philly blunts or whatever, you know what I'm saying, or snacks and what have you. But anytime you see individuals hanging at a gas station, it's probably something you need to avoid. Go to another one, and when you do get out of the vehicle, have your head on a swivel. You know what I'm saying? I don't care if you're in Georgetown or if you're on Benning Road. It doesn't matter where you are because it's not really a so-called safe place. It doesn't exist. The only safe place is in your mind. It does not exist. I told people my whole career, they would ask me, is it safe? Hey, is it safe to walk at night? Use your common sense and always be aware of your surroundings. It's really nowhere that's safe. So avoid those gas stations and places where you know that it's not really a lot of traffic. Avoid them if you have to go at night. I get it, but try to be very picky on where you go at night. And if you can't go during the day to a predominantly busy gas station, and take your keys with you. Don't leave your purse in the back seat if you're a female. Don't leave these items visible, because a lot of times you're distracted. And put the phone down. Put it under your seat or somewhere. Actually, take it on you. Take it and put it in your pocket. Keep it on you. So if you do get carjacked, you can make that call. A lot of people lay their phones right on the dash, or they clip to the dashboard on a holder or something like that. But take your phone with you. That's a lot to think about if you just getting gas. You're not thinking about doing all that. Turn the vehicle off. Whether you got a kid, obviously if you got a child in the back, it should be turned off. Trust me, the child is going to live. You're not going to be out there for 30 minutes getting gas. And 9 times out of 10, if you were getting gas 30 minutes, you couldn't afford what's going to happen if it did pump for 30 minutes. So that's not going to happen. And if you don't have a child, don't leave the car running. I don't care how cold it is. Put your keys in your pocket. And some individuals obviously have their vehicles that you can leave running and have your keys on you. Still not a good idea. Obviously if the individual jumps in the vehicle, pulls off, or carjacks you without the keys, they're not going to get us so far. But why put yourself in a position to be a victim if you don't have to be a victim? And I'm going to summarize it. That's going I'm going to wrap it up. You feel free to subscribe. Feel free not to subscribe. I don't do this for monetary. I just do this to try to educate individuals and pretty much give a common sense aspect of what's going on in the city and among other topics. But I'm not in this, obviously, not to make money and things like that. That's not my thing. But subscribe if you choose to. If you dislike some of what I said, leave it in the comments. I will respond. I'm not doing this to be liked. I'm not doing it necessarily to be disliked. I'm just giving my straightforward opinions and my common sense aspect. And like I said, I'm not trying to see people be victims of crimes senseless if they can actually avoid being a victim. Obviously, there's some things you can do everything right and still be a victim, but I'm not trying to see individuals just have their items that they've worked hard for just taken, and then the next thing you know, your vehicle is found somewhere burned up because they just committed a homicide. And even if it's not burned up, who wants the vehicle after it's been involved in the shooting? You don't know if they're going to retaliate. They see this vehicle, hey, this was the vehicle involved in the shooting. You may have gotten your vehicle back, but they might say, oh man, it's the dude that shot at us. And then all of a sudden, you're in a vehicle being shot up because that vehicle was used. So like I said, it's a whole lot to it, and if you can avoid being a victim, that is the objective, but honestly, I don't see anything getting better. I don't see it. I don't see the Metropolitan Police Department or anyone talking about a solution or defense or, hey, we're going to do this. This is a pandemic. Individuals are being carjacked on the hour. We have to do something. Of course, like I said, I see them put the mandates out for the restaurant. You can't go into a restaurant if you're not vaccinated, but you can go into a restaurant if you're vaccinated, if you got your vaccination card and all that, and then you can go to your car and get carjacked by a 13-year-old. And guess what? They can crash your car, flip it, turn it over, and what have you. And in most cases, there won't be no real prosecution because it's a juvenile. They're going to pretty much give him the benefit of the doubt. It's going to be some type of repercussion, and he'll be out. You think about the individual that was dragged and killed at the National Stadium. This individual was a senior citizen, was still delivering, just trying to make ends meet because a lot of people are having financial hardships and still doing little side jobs like delivering. The man didn't want to let go of his vehicle, whatever, and the 2 females drug him to his death. Now, that's somebody's father, that's somebody's grandfather. I don't want to hear all that stuff about what, they were just kids. They committed an act, unfortunately. Rehab can't bring him back. You can't rehabilitate an individual that's committed a senseless act like that, and death was the result of it. Now, obviously, in a case where, these individuals were defending themselves or something like that, and a death result, that's something totally different. But you took this man's vehicle, and in the process, he lost his life. Now, a lot of times, individuals say, well, maybe he should have just let the vehicle go. He shouldn't. Yes, that's easier said than done, but that was his vehicle. You don't know what you'll do in the heat of the moment. He lost his life. Obviously, he was trying to make ends meet. He can't do it now from the grave. These individuals are being to criminal facility until they're 18. I believe 18 or 21. 21, I believe. Either way, they're going to go on and live their lives. And that's just not enough. That's just not enough. That's just not enough. You owe more. They're going to go on with their lives. They're going to eventually come home. This guy's not coming home. Whatever finances he contributed to the household, trying to make those ends meet, not only is that's gone, his full-time job is gone, everything he contributed, the fact that he was a father is gone. I have no patience for that. And of course, I have a daughter. If my daughter committed an act like that, I would be very, very hurt. I would, obviously be apologetic to the one she hurt. But on the same note, I understand. If she spent the rest of her life or got 20 years for that crime, I that's not what I would really want, because I wouldn't want her to commit an act like that. But I understand. And I have to accept the fact that she took somebody's life. You took somebody's life. So regardless of whether it be my child or your child, there has to be accountability. And right now, there's no accountability, and that's one of the problems. So, hey, look, subscribe if you choose to. If you dislike something I said, stick a comment in there. If you like something I said, stick a comment in there. If you got a question about something that's law enforcement related, feel free to ask me. Because there are a lot of things that people believe that, hey, did the police really do this? I can clarify a lot of things that are false, some things that are true, some things that they perpetrate that they do that are complete lies. But that's a whole nother topic. Like I said, feel free to do what you choose to do. I don't do this for money. I'm not affiliated with any form of organization, and I'm not doing this for money. Just trying to get some common sense out there. And if I can prevent one person from being a victim of a crime, whether it be carjacking or some other form of crime, that's all I'm trying to do. All right? Good night.